Hey, thanks for clicking on another Mr. Maple video. I'm Matt at Mr. Maple.
And I'm Brian.
We greatly appreciate you clicking on this. Today we have a fun video for you on wonderful weeping maples, a few of which are in our Pendulous Treasures collection, and some amazing weeping form Japanese maples.
We really hope you enjoy this one. We've got some really exciting cultivars up here. I think you guys are really going to dig this video.
Hi, I'm Tim Nichols from MrMaple.com. We greatly appreciate watching today's video. I think today you're going to really enjoy our video on wonderful weeping Japanese maples. We've got some amazing different weeping selections. These are all selections that are weeping that don't have that disectum leaf. So they're very unusual, very different, and exceptional. Our first one today is Acer palmatum Ryusen. This is a weeping selection that flows down like a fountain. It's pretty amazing. It's a newer selection. It's a tried and true selection that is very easy to grow for most people in their gardens.
Yeah, Ryusen's going to get about as big as you stake it. And as Tim said, it's going to have that larger palmate style leaf that you're familiar with mostly on upright Japanese maples, but in a extremely weeping, extremely pendulous form. Now, Ryusen is an introduction by our friends at Kobayashi Momiji Inn. Tim and I were able to go and see the original one at Kobayashi Momiji Inn. We'll throw some pictures into that. The original tree is actually grafted on a high graft, so it does start the tree out on a very old tree, so it's going to have more of a standard look to it. But there's a lot of different ways to grow these. We typically stake them up. Unstaked, they'll be more of a ground cover, but they'll get as tall as you stake them. So if you don't stake this, it's going to be a low spreading tree. We've actually seen this one done in a hanging basket. Now, it's actually getting very popular even in America to grow those out of the hanging basket out of the top, but we've seen some different unique ways to do that for sure.
Yeah, we saw some growing upside down as a topsy-turvy. That made it so unique because this is one that grows basically as tall as you stake it and cascades downward. And when you grow it as a topsy-turvy, all the branches are essentially staked growing one direction downward. And then years down later, you flip it over, and then all the branches start weeping down from that. And so that's a really fun way to grow this one or a lot of other weeping selections.
Now, what Tim means by a topsy-turvy is someone's put a hole in the bottom of the pot or like a standard hanging basket style and put the tree through so it's unstaked weeping out of the bottom of the basket, like a topsy-turvy tomato grower. Now, what that does is after, we tried this here at our nursery, and after several days, all the foliage actually rotates over. So it'll start out upside down. We did it in leaf, which was unique, but after about 3 days, all the foliage actually rotated over, which was really interesting to watch too. And just a fun way to grow it. So essentially the tree unstaked itself, looked upside down, and then when you can grow annuals on the top of it. So what they were doing is they were growing annuals on it for a couple years, and then essentially planting it the other direction and letting the tree weep back the other direction. So we gave it a really unique shape. If you do try this, make sure to put it in an area where it gets some natural water. I did one of these in the greenhouse, but I didn't hang it where it got watered over the winter, so it didn't do too well. So make sure to be conscious of the watering amount when you do that, but it is a fun way to grow them.
That trip to Kobayashi Momiji Inn was such an honor and privilege. Kobayashi Momiji Inn is a nursery that's been around for over 300 years. They introduced Tomukiyama over 300 years ago. An amazing privilege to get to go there, and we actually got to meet Jiro of Jiro Shidari. And it was amazing because we went to meet him and we were so excited, and he came up and said, yeah, I know who these guys are. I've been to their website. They have nice things to say about me. And so it was such an honor and privilege to get to meet him, and the fact that he'd already knew who we were and been to our website.
We felt pretty cool for that.
Yeah, but Ryusen is a very strong grower. It's one that's very vigorous, very cascading, and it's very easy to grow. It can handle a lot of sun, even in the deep south, which is really surprising for most Japanese maples.
So Acer palmatum Ryusen is an exceptionally heat tolerant tree. This is one that can go in full sun up to zone 8B. I do recommend checking your heat index in zone 9. Depending on how hot you are in that area, it may even be able to do sun there. This is a tree that works zones 5 through 9 and is exceptionally durable. We find that this one is a great tree for that high heat exposure area, and just one that's an easy one to grow for sure.
And this is one that can provide some exceptional fall color. It can be from a bold orange to a deep maroon red. It's one of those trees that performs so well out in the landscape and gives you some amazing fall color. It can be grown as a container plant or out in the landscape. And either way you choose, this plant is going to be simply amazing.
Now, we do have some exceptional sizes on this right now. You're watching this video, it's January of 2022. So if you're watching this later than that, it may be slightly larger or slightly smaller. This size is exemplary of what we have in stock right now in our 1 gallons. But if you're watching it, a year from now, again, that sizes can change. But some really good sizes on that. I think it's one that's an excellent grower. It's a fun plant to have in the garden. So next up, we're going to talk about another really fun weeping form. We kind of put together a little collection here at our nursery where we call them Pendulous Treasures. And these are some weeping trees that we either introduced or are fairly exclusive to Mr. Maple. Rikuzen Shidari is an extremely fun one from Japan. Now, we don't have these available currently on the website, but we wanted to give you a preview of them. The ones we have here on the table are actually right here. They've actually been cut back heavy for sign wood because we're grafting every single one of these we can right now. It's an awesome tree from Japan with a very, very large Amoenum style leaf. So it gives it a little something different than some of these other smaller palmate style leaves. I would actually compare this leaf more to the size of, say, Osakazuki or Hogyoku. So it's going to have that larger, more round leaf with some amazing yellow fall colors.
Yeah, this selection, we first saw it at Tsukasa Maple. Yutaka Tanaka spotted this growing at a temple, and he grafted it and thought it was such an amazing tree. It had the name Rikuzen Shidari on it. Unfortunately, a tsunami came in and wiped out the original plant, and it's because he took cuttings of that tree and grafted it and propagated that then he could go back and give a tree back to that temple and say, here's your tree that you lost after your tsunami. I hope this helps with, making things as beautiful as they used to be and as beautiful as they were, and continuing that tradition and that legacy.
Yeah, it really comments on how important it is to get some of these beautiful plants that are kind of one of a kind in production. And this is one I think you're really going to enjoy. It's a very unique tree in that it has that very, very large foliage to it. I think it's going to be an exceptional plant for anybody who likes the weeping forms. It's very different than Ryusen because of that much larger leaf, distinctly yellow. This one's distinctly yellow in the fall. It makes a great pairing with anything that you're going to put out there that's an upright. So, I mean, I would love to plant this one next to an Osakazuki, next to a Hogyoku. You're going to have the same style leaf, but in a weeping form. That's going to be the Osakazuki is going to be a bold upright red. The Hogyoku is going to be a bold orange. This one is without question an exceptional bold yellow for us. So you're going to love that color. I first saw it there at Tsukasa Maple with Tim, and I was just, awestruck by this tree. We had some good fall color when we came up there, and I'm like, what is this? This is just, wow. I've never seen anything like this. Distinctly different characteristics. This was the only one that maybe outside this lineage of plants as well. It's kind of its own thing in that it's a different style foliage for sure. And I think it's one you're going to enjoy in your garden. Again, we don't currently have this on Mr. Maple, but we wanted to give you a preview of it. It's one that we will be listing in the next year for sure again.
And Yutaka Tanaka had grew this in a unique way. He'd staked it straight up, and you'll see in some of the photos, the branches are cascading. It's a strict weeper, straight down off the sides of it. Mm-hmm. And so by giving it a straight up look and letting it cascade off of that, it really gives us something unique and special, especially when this goes to that yellow fall color with that larger leaf. I think this one's got a special place in the garden.
For sure.
And Matt had to go back and plant one of these in his yard as well because this one, it's so awesome that, and it's got such a fun story. Every plant and every tree has a story behind it. And the fact that this was at a temple, got produced, and then the original tree got washed away by one of the tsunamis. It's such a fun story, but also the plant itself is so amazing that it equals the story.
Now you can go to Mr. Maple and you can go to the filter section. You can actually go to the complete Mr. Maple files there and then go to the filter and go to Pendulous Treasures. And it'll filter down some of these and it'll show you some of the ones we were focusing on. We're really excited to go through future generations of Rikuzen Shidari and look for unique and different traits. Some of these next trees we'll get into are, unique outside the box variances, and we've got some really fun ones to come. Often when we're doing these videos, people say, what about this one? What about that one? Well, don't worry, it isn't our last video on the topic. We're going to cover a lot of different fun weeping trees. This is just an intro to it. We're going to be doing a lot more about that, so we hope you enjoy that.
Next up, we've got some fun introductions that are our introductions from the lineage of Nakakomoto weeping. That one's coming up as well, so stay tuned. The first one that we're talking about is Acer palmatum, Fountain of Youth. This is a plant that has that strong, heavily cascading habit. It's not a lace leaf, but the leaf is almost more like a hand, I guess the way you describe it, Matt. A little bit larger, and it's more divided back, almost like a Matsumuri.
It's a really unique one. It's going to have the same shape. I think this one actually confuses some people because it has the same shape as Ryusen. It gets about as tall as you stake it. It's extremely weeping and extremely pendulous, but with that elongated foliage. I mean, each leaf just has a very unique shape to it. We loved the name Fountain of Youth for this one. We thought it gave it something unique and different. It is some really interesting color patterns too. It changes a good bit throughout the season.
Yeah, this one's going to be that green with well, actually a little bit more of a salmon pink when it first leaves out, then green during the summer, and then in the fall it goes to bold oranges and reds.
Yeah, very unique one. I think it's going to be a fun one. I've seen, now Heather Strong may have helped popularize this online. Shout out to Heather Strong. I know Alan Castile's growing several of these as well. Heather posted a picture of a Ryusin in a hanging basket kind of weeping over to the side there. I know Alan Castile's also growing pretty much every weeping selection that we do, all the ones we're talking about here today, in hanging baskets as well. And so you'll see some photos of those on our website from Alan, because they're just an amazing way to grow these. I think it's a fun, unique way to capture what's interesting about these weeping forms. Now, they will weep down much further than the basket, so it's kind of a unique way to grow them because the growth is going to hang down much further than the root system of the plant. So it's an interesting way to do it, but I think it's a fun way to capture that weeping habit and add that Japanese maple texture to a hanging basket.
And this is one that really stood out to us. We went through a large batch of seedlings from the lineage of Nakakomoto weeping, and this one really stood out to us because its leaves were just so divided, more divided than any of the other seedlings. Not a lace leaf at all, but a very unique leaf shape for that weeping habit. And that's the reason we selected Fountain of Youth. And you know, we always talk about names matching with plants, and I think this is a perfect name for this tree.
So next up, we're going to be talking about another Mr. Maple introduction. This is Acer palmatum Looking Glass Falls. Now, you may have heard us refer to some of our introductions as Area 51, and we often joke about that. We call it the Area 51 collection when we name trees here at Mr. Maple. And the way that came about, well, a couple different ways actually, but one of the ways was we would hide things when we would go to garden shows because Dad would sell something we had one of. And so it went into Area 51, and no one got in or out of that area with plants. You know, you didn't have clearance, you weren't selling those plants. And our good friend Richard Bomar probably actually coined the term when he came to our nursery, and he said, "This is all fun, but I want to see that Area 51 where you're hiding the new stuff." So a lot of our collections have become that Area 51 collection, and Looking Glass Falls is no exception to that. It's a really fun plant. It's going to have that exact same shape as Ryusin. This is an extremely weeping form. It's going to get about as tall as you stake it as well. If unstaked, it's going to be more of a ground cover. But what's unique about this one is in the early spring, it leaves out with a light lavender purple border. So it gives it a little something unique on that foliage, and something I think you'll enjoy. I think it makes a really cool variance to this collection, and you know, just a real variance that's needed in this style of foliage for sure.
Everybody loves Murasaki Kiyohime, what that provides in the spring interest. And what this is Looking Glass Falls is almost Murasaki Kiyohime X something like a Jiroshidari or Ryusin or Nakakomoto weeping. And what this does is you get a heavily cascading habit, but with that sort of red purple border Matt was talking about. Looking Glass Falls is actually a local waterfall here in western North Carolina. And so we named it after our local waterfall in sort of tribute, almost like what a lot of the Japanese do in naming their Japanese maples after their local waterfalls. We've done the same here with Looking Glass Falls. And this is a very beautiful waterfall that's here in western North Carolina that we often go to from time to time.
Yeah, we thought it gave it a little something extra. Several of our new evaluations of this weeping style, we've actually thrown some local waterfall names on. We hope you like this one. I think the Looking Glass name, it's just something a little majestic, and it gave it something a little extra with that border to it. Now, conditions in the spring can change with this one. Leafing out very slowly will give you the best border, and a very quick to leaf can mute that out a little bit, I've noticed. But it's an excellent tree, and I think it's one you're really going to love in your landscape and garden. So we've cleared the table here to talk about the granddaddy of all these weeping forms. Last but not least, we're going to be discussing Nakakomoto weeping.
Nakakomoto weeping is a 400-year-old treasure in Japan. It's often referred to as Japan's national treasure. We were on a Japanese TV show, and we were an hour's drive from this. And one of our good friends whose nursery we were at took us to go visit this tree, and it was really a trip of a lifetime.
Yeah, we got to pull up there, and I just remember getting there with Nakata-san, and just shout out to him, thank him for his graciousness in taking us there. We were translating a brochure to this place, and it said we're less than an hour from the National Treasure Tree of Japan, and we're like, hey, what's all this about? This sounds like something we'd really like to see. And the TV show said, we're not planning to cover that right now, but we're going to be shooting some B-roll tomorrow in the rain, and you'll have a free day. And we'll see if somebody is able to take it. Well, Nakata-san volunteered, which was so kind of him. And it was one of those just amazing experiences. We pulled up to this tree, and we got out. There's a little bit of a walk from where you park to the tree. And just awestruck. It was great fall color, and we'll throw some clips in. Eventually, we're going to do like a small documentary style video on a deep dive just about Naka-Komodo weeping, and we'll throw even more into that. Shout out to Brian if you've been seeing all these new editing skills. Brian's been making all our videos look so much better. So we're going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive on Naka-Komodo weeping, but we wanted to show you a little bit of what we have right now. These will be coming up on a 10 at 10 very soon, wink wink. And this is indicative of the sizes we have right now.
This is the biggest size we've ever offered on a 1 gallon for Naka-Komodo weeping. A lot of these are really 3 gallon sizes in 1 gallons.
Yeah, I think you're going to really enjoy this. It's an excellent plant and a great way to start one at a very good size. It's going to have that green palmate style leaf. This is the granddaddy to Ryusin. It's where it all starts. I was really awestruck to stand next to a tree that was 400 years old. I mean, you stand next to something that's been there that long, and it's so majestic and so interesting, and you just start to think like, wow, I mean, like so much has changed in 400 years, and this tree's been alive this whole time.
The United States became the United States.
Yeah, it was really interesting and just inspiring to see, and we're excited to bring this one to you as something we offer here at Mr. Maple. We hope you enjoy it. It's one that's going to be an exceptional grower. Typically, this one's about 5 to 6 feet tall, by about 5 to 6 feet wide in the same time frame. More of a low cascading umbrella. You know, we often joke, I've been to Master Gardener conferences where people say, what's the max size this will ever get? And you know, I'll set a 1 gallon out of this and I'll say 400 years it'll look exactly like this. So sometimes it's one of those time frame things because, you know, some of these majestic plants we're putting out can outlive us all. And it's kind of a beautiful thing. I think it's a really interesting plant and something you're going to enjoy adding to your landscape.
So when we were driving there, the drive was probably about an hour, hour and a half to go visit this tree. And it felt like an eternity. And then when we pull up, before we see this tree sitting on the hill beside a temple, we're literally look and see a sign that says Naka-Komodo weeping. And then it's got it in English, Romanji, and then also in Japanese. And that's when our hearts started pounding. We started getting excited. Then we had to find somewhere to park. And then we walked up to go see this tree. And it sits on a hillside, and there's actually a seedling from it right beside of it as well that's pretty old.
A couple hundred years old?
Yeah, a couple hundred years old. And around the town, there are also other weeping seedlings from this tree all around the town. And it's pretty exciting that this whole town has sort of captured this one tree at the temple and then sort of have embraced it because it's so special and so unique. It's the national treasure of Japan.
Yeah, we were up in the Fukushima prefecture, which is where a lot of the tsunamis and things that actually happened. And gosh, it was just interesting to see that this was still around and still there and such an awesome plant. We were on the TV show Who Wants to Come to Japan, and basically they gave the translator the job of not losing us. They were like, these guys are crazy and they're wanting to go see all these things, so don't lose them. So
shout out to Ace K.
Yeah.
If you're watching, he was awesome because he could then translate everything for us and tell us what things on the sign said and tell us about this tree, how old it was, and a lot of the history behind the plant.
Yeah, we use that to the fullest for sure to go and meet other nurseries or just to explain some of the things we didn't understand when we're reading signs and stuff. So we really enjoyed that trip. We're going to do a deep dive on this where we go even more in depth, probably even an upcoming episode of our podcast where we go deeper in depth on Naka-Komodo weeping.
The best part about this plant was when we went and saw it was in perfect fall color. We're talking bold oranges and reds on this old majestic tree. The stakes on holding it up were like 200 years old, right?
Yeah. They were writing on some of the stakes that he indicated may say they're right around 200 years old just for the stakes on this plant, which is, you know, wow. I mean, it was just really cool to see. It was probably the most beautiful Japanese maple I'll ever see on the planet. I mean, how often do you get to go see a 400-year-old tree? It was just one of those awe-inspiring things that I thought was so much fun.
The unique thing about this plant is that the branches sort of hook and arch, and that gives it a very strong and distinctive shape, especially if you stake it up some and then let it hook and arch off of that. And when you do that, you sort of embrace the full essence of what the original Naka-Komodo weeping showed and did.
Yeah, we hope you'll enjoy this little piece of history in your garden, and maybe it'll be something that's as special to you as it is to us, because we've really enjoyed being able to offer this one. And just the majesticness of that original tree to me is one of my favorite experiences I've had in the Japanese maple industry and getting to tour. We've been so blessed to get to do so many cool things, But I think that really, is one of the memories I'll always carry, is getting to go and see that.
Hey, thanks everybody for watching. We're going to continue on with that discussion part on wonderful weeping Japanese maples.
Yeah, we've been calling this our round table discussion. We've got a regular old square table here, but we've got some really cool trees in front of us. We hope you enjoy this part of the presentation. We kind of just bring everything up and talk about some of our favorites, some of the nuances about each, and different ways to compare them and contrast them. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take Nakakomoto Weeping out of the equation for the favorite, because I know that's my favorite, and I know that's your favorite because we got to see him. Taking Nakakomoto out of consideration for your favorite, because we got to see a 400-year-old tree of it, what would you say your favorite is of this grouping?
My favorite of this grouping would next be the other one that came from a temple in Japan, Rikuzen Shidari.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's got that large leaf, the yellow fall color, I'm going to steal that one as my favorite because it's so unique and so different. And with that yellow fall color, it really stands out from this crowd, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It's just very unique and very different from these.
For sure.
It's my favorite of these simply because it's got that story behind it.
Brian, did you grow many of these in your garden, and which would be your favorite?
I grew a few of these, but the Ryusen was one that I had that was pretty good size. And what I really like about it is if you stake it up high and you get that really nice cascading, and then once it reaches the ground, it kind of starts to spread out. It almost looks like a large, beautiful dress in the garden, especially like in the fall with all those colors. And it's just adds so much texture and shape and characteristic in the garden. I mean, it's just different from everything else. I really love that about Ryusen.
That one really does put that little skirt dress down at the bottom a lot of times. We went and visited a garden in upstate New York, and they were growing it as a ground cover. And they just let it just spread out across the ground.
Yeah.
Because, and what you can do with any of these, and just let them just sort of creep across the ground because they're so cascading.
Yeah, I would say that one's definitely probably the customer's pick and most people's entryway point into these. It's the one that's the most common of this grouping and probably what gets people interested in. A lot of these other ones are newer and aren't out there probably besides at our place right now, especially some of our introductions. If I were to pick my favorite of this group, I might pick Looking Glass Falls. I think it's got something a little different than everything else. Now, you've probably seen, if you follow Mr. Maple or you sign up for our weekly emails, we do a lot of different varieties. We've got some really cutting edge ones coming. We may do a whole nother video on yellow forms of Ryusen and weeping forms like that. So there's a lot of different ones to capture and talk about here. These are just some of the ones that caught our eye and really interest us. But I would say maybe Looking Glass Falls, just because I think the name fits it. The name's like, I like Looking Glass Falls. It's like a fun thing for me. I grew up going there as a kid, and then I think the tree actually, it has that, that border that gives it something looking glass about it. It kind of gives it that, it fits it for me.
And the looking glass is also something that you see with different cultivars in their name in Japanese culture and Japanese literature on cultivars. So it sort of brings that essence of a waterfall with something that's already tied with Japan into a tree, but also named after something here local.
Yeah.
So I think that's, how can you get better than that on a name?
Yeah, I haven't had the opportunity to see that in leaf yet. I'm really excited about that. I mean, just you saying that border that it has on the edges of the leaves, I mean, that's going to be really cool to see.
We've been playing around with some different variances here. Again, we're calling some of our weeping introductions, or some that are more exclusive to us, the Pendulous Treasures collection. So you can always go look at that on Mr. Maple. That's a great way to kind of see some of the new cutting edge ones we're working on. What do you think about the ways some people are growing these in hanging baskets? What are your thoughts on that, Tim?
I think it's pretty amazing. I think it's something that adds something very unique because you're taking a Japanese maple and you're growing a tree in a basket versus growing annuals that you have to replace every year. You're growing something that you can enjoy, leave in that basket, and really have something that's something year-round.
Yeah.
It's sort of like whenever you take the annuals out of your bed and you put trees in there, now you're taking them out of your baskets and you're putting trees in there to give you a good fall color. It really,
that's pretty
it's
cool.
really like the next step in garden sophistication, I think.
Hey, thanks for watching our video on wonderful weeping Japanese maples. We hope you enjoyed this one. It's a little something different. We've been doing these pairing videos to kind of give you some groupings right now this time of year. As always, the examples that we showed you today are what look like around this time frame. We shot this video in January of 2022, so these sizes are indicative of that. In a year from now, they may be slightly larger or slightly smaller, so just keep that in mind.
If you guys are enjoying these videos, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel, and you guys have a great day.
God bless.